but I think we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Adam Hops. I'm at the National Operations Center of Excellence, and very excited to be hosting this webinar today. We're talking about incorporating the TOM into academic resources, how the Transportation Operations Manual, or TOM, can be used in a number of ways. This is the fourth webinar that we've held this year addressing the use of the Transportation Operations Manual. You can see I brought it up where it's at in the store. I brought it up here in the Astro store to let everybody know who may not have seen that the manual has actually been heavily discounted after its initial offering to all the state DOTs. So it is a little bit more accessible as a price point that's in there to receive the full manual that's there. And then I mentioned this is the fourth in a series of webinars. We've actually done three webinars on sort of how the TOM is currently being used, what it is, what it isn't, additional resources that are used to support the TOM. And those can be actually accessed. I'll show you the NOCoE YouTube library, but those can be accessed as well. So if you haven't seen those, they are, one of them is right here. I'll paste this in for everybody. But this is midway through one of them. You can see this is a diagram, our friend John Hibbert at Georgia DOT, a diagram of sort of how the manual fits into other items that are in there. So I'll put this link in the chat, but just know that there's other resources that are out there about the manual and more coming after this one as well. A little bit of background on the manual for those who haven't seen these webinars yet or heard a presentation. The manual was developed as part of a NCHRP research project. It was completed and published in April of last year and rolled out through last summer and last year too, the focus on a lot of state DOTs. What we're doing this year more in 2024, especially into 2025, is focusing as much as possible on other uses of the manual. So you'll hear us talk about the manual. I'm currently at a peer exchange around the World Cup 2026. We're using aspects of the manual that refer to planned special events, crowd management, interagency sharing, pulling those up and using those as part of the resources here. We're reaching out with these speakers today to more academic groups about how the TOM can be integrated into academia, how students can use it, and what it looks like perhaps as like a training tool. So that's where the manual's at. I'll put the links in and how you can access it and get the information that you would need to access it or to at least learn more about in addition to what's going to be talked about today. One moment and I will introduce our speakers. So three fantastic speakers today who are going to be coming on to talk. The first is Dr. Stephanie Ivey from University of Memphis. Dr. Ivey is collaborated with USDOT and NOCoE on numerous different resources for students in the area of TSMO and operations. Dr. Hadi as well is joining us from Florida International University. Same as well, Dr. Hadi's helped guide a lot of the workforce development work that NOCoE has done around TSMO and operations. And then Tara Reel is here with us as well. She's joining to represent the ITS, a Joint Program Office Professional Capacity Building Program. And she's going to talk a little bit more about like what's going on at PCB and what they're doing in expanding their professional capacity building program. So happy to have her as well. They're each going to talk for about 10 minutes, maybe a little longer. And then we'll have a little roundtable Q&A at the end on some key questions. We invite you to join in with questions using the Q&A box at the bottom, or to use the chat if you have anything about the webinar or anything not associated to perhaps a question for the presenter. Please feel free to use the chat. But with that, we thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to Dr. Ivey.
Thanks, Adam. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's see, I guess I can, well, we'll just go with it like this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I have integrated the Transportation Operations Manual into courses that I teach. And so give you a little bit of a perspective from my point of view. one of the things that I have been focused on in the last several years in terms of how I'm adapting and transforming the courses that I teach are really several different things, both from industry and student perspectives. So on the industry side of things, one of the things that we see a lot is that uh, employers are looking for students that have skill sets and competencies that are beyond sort of that traditional set of knowledge and skills that they might come out of a program with. I'm in the civil engineering department at the University of Memphis, so my focus is on that point of view. But I think we see this broadly, in a lot of different disciplines. The other thing that has been a real concern for me is the fact that students, in many cases, are failing to really find where they fit. And so a lot of the work that I have been doing in trying to integrate a lot more industry engagement into my courses has been to try to address that particular issue. And so we know that we need to really think about how we're aligning college curricular content to the needs of employers and how that's impacted by the evolution of technology, which is incredibly rapid. And then thinking also about how we're supporting students in developing cross-disciplinary knowledge and skills. So those are the things that are kind of at the back of my mind, or in a lot of cases at the forefront as I'm redesigning and thinking about ways to change up the way I'm teaching. So there are 3 different classes that I teach. One is Transportation Systems Engineering. I have that in bold because that's the only required course that I'm going to be talking about. The other 2 are elective. I have the Transformative Technologies and Engineering course and the Intro to TSMO class as well. So the Transportation Systems Engineering class that we teach, this is a junior level core civil course. This is actually the only civil course or transportation course that students are required to take within our major. And I think that's really important because this is very common at programs around the country that undergraduates in civil engineering will only take one required transportation class, and it usually doesn't show up until around the junior level. And so by that time, they've been exposed to a lot of other subdisciplines of civil. And this is really the first time that they're seeing this kind of content. So in this particular class, it's basically a survey course because this is the only exposure that they get. We're trying to make sure they've covered most of the content that's going to be expected for them to be knowledgeable about on the FE exam. And so it's a range of things from driver and vehicle characteristics, geometric design, traffic operations, transportation planning. But you spend a lot of time on the breadth, not so much on the depth. So it becomes a little bit tricky to integrate specific content that you're interested in, like TSMO. So from my perspective, one of the best ways that I've been able to do that is through use of a couple of different resources. So one, of course, is the operations manual, and particularly chapter 2, because I feel like that gives them just kind of a nice introduction, not too deep, high enough level that they can really grasp the kind of the understanding of what this is all about, gives them enough exposure to begin thinking about this. I also use a lot of other kinds of resources like journal publications or articles that talk about new technologies and how they're being used, but also the National Operations Center case study reviews. Those are great resources as well, particularly just to give students a little bit of a quick look at how this kind of work gets applied. And then guest speakers, of course, are, I think, crucial for all of this because they're the ones that can really bring the practice to life in the classroom. So then the Transformative Technologies and Engineering course is a little bit different. This is an upper division undergraduate or graduate elective, and it's interdisciplinary. So students from any major in the College of Engineering can take it. And that's intentional because we really want students to start thinking about transportation from different disciplines, and we want them to recognize how they can fit in, especially within operations. There is a tremendous amount of industry engagement in this particular course. We have anywhere from 10 to 15 different speakers over the course of the semester in this class. We do field trips, and they get a really solid exposure to TSMO through it as well. Multiple chapters from the operations manual are used, particularly the chapters 29 and 30 on the technologies and the industry trends. But then also, again, back to the Operations Center case studies, and all of that really in advance of them thinking about the innovation project that they're going to do for the semester, which we have been really excited to align with the Transportation Technology Tournament for the last several years. So we've actually moved the course to a spring-only offering so that it's always in line with that tournament, because it's such a great opportunity for students to really get a real-world project, to get to interact with mentors, and really get kind of a deep dive into some of this. And then the ITS PCB foundational trainings, I think, are also a fantastic resource for a course like this. So we have used those pretty extensively as well. So then the other class that I mentioned that I developed is an intro to TSMO course. So obviously this one is going to be very relevant and will be the one where students get the greatest exposure or the deepest content exposure related to TSMO. And this, again, is an upper division undergraduate or graduate level civil course. This one primarily is taken by civil engineering students, although we do often have transportation planning students that take it as well. And of course, this one extensively uses the operations manual. Just about everything in it is relevant for this particular class. We really focus on a traffic transit freight context for it. And of course, the operations manual does a fantastic job of integrating these different elements within there. So it's been a fabulous resource from that point of view. We also, again, use the ITS PCB foundational trainings, and I think Tara's probably going to talk more about all of this in a few minutes. So I'm not going to go into detail on those, and then also all of the academic resources, including the case modules. So we've used extensive ITS PCB resources in this particular class as well. And then again, the Operations Center case studies, those are basically a standard for all of these classes. And then the other course components that really bring all of this to life then are the field trips, industry speakers, and individual and group projects that allow students to explore areas of their interest in more depth. So I think one of the things that I have seen coming out of these particular classes, and particularly the fact that we're not only integrating industry manuals into the class as that primary text, but also all of the industry engagement that's happening throughout the semesters. This is really impactful with students. The speakers who come to talk to them in the class really make a huge impact on not only what they're thinking about doing in their career path, but also just helping them think about what those opportunities are, and helping them understand that, what they've had in their head about what they think a civil engineer or mechanical engineer or computer engineer might end up doing. They've really got to be a little bit more open-minded about that and recognize that there's lots of different opportunities. I think the other thing that's really nice about the operations manual is that focus on collaboration, and that really helps tie into a lot of what we're trying to work with students on and helping them recognize the value of that and see the benefit of collaboration, and particularly across different disciplines. So some of the key takeaways from use of this, I think one of the primary things is it's an amazingly comprehensive resource, and it's free, which is always fantastic for students. It's incredibly relevant for industry and something that we hope that they're using once they get out of our doors and into the work world as well. So it's really a great opportunity to have them exposed to this now so that they're able to draw from that once they get into the work world. And then again, back to that demonstration of collaboration, I think that's really critical as students enter the workforce today. And then I think the other thing that's really important about this is it's just very accessible. And I don't mean that just from the standpoint of being able to access it online and that's free, but I think also in terms of the way that it's written. The language is not too difficult for students of a lot of different levels, particularly if you're picking and choosing what you're exposing them to within it. But I think that also makes it a very valuable resource in the academic setting. Other opportunities that I really see for using this include senior design courses, particularly capstone design, independent project classes where students may be focused on transportation projects, and then even early outreach. You know, there's plenty of content within there that's relevant for high school students, and I'm actually planning to use part of it in a teacher workshop that I'm going to be doing in a few months as well. So some of the challenges we've run into, that early exposure, I think, is tricky, particularly because students don't see this until so late in their program if they're in a civil engineering major. And so that can be a real issue in terms of getting students interested early enough. Making the case for an atypical course, the things that I've talked about in this presentation are pretty different from what we might see in most of our curriculum. And so sometimes it's challenging to get buy-in from the department. And then real world projects. And this is where I circle back to the transportation technology tournament and why this is so valuable. You know, it's oftentimes difficult to find projects and mentors for students to be engaged in. And so I think that's such a great opportunity. So I am going to close out now and turn things over to Dr. Hadi and Tara.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, Dr. Ivey. We really appreciate it. Always love seeing the use of the NOCoE case studies in that format, of course, and appreciate those mentions in there. As Dr. Hadi brings up his slides, just a reminder that the TOM is free for state DOTs. State DOTs get 5 free copies. If you need any that they can share among staff in different ways. And if you need any help accessing your state DOT librarian to get those, please just let us know. Turn it over now to Dr. Hadi.
Thank you, Adam. And again, I at Florida International University, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we teach ITS and TSMO, and then as Dr. Ivey said, was describing how the potential for incorporating it. I have not incorporated TOM and material into my ITS class and other classes, but I'm planning to do that in the spring semester, which is coming in a couple of months. Basically, as Dr. Ivey was mentioning, a big issue in civil engineering is we have only one undergrad class required. There are a couple of other elective, but the exposure to TSMO and ITS is very limited. And this is all universities have the same issue. And I'm thinking as I see the presentation, maybe I'm not teaching that, but I will approach the instructor of that class and give them some kind of suggestion about incorporating a chapter, maybe chapter 2, as Stephanie was talking about, and there. We have 80 graduate level classes. 2 of them we can consider to be ITS or TSMO classes. Other is a traffic signal control and ITS class. And obviously we have all other transportation engineering, from traffic operation to highway capacity to demand forecasting to safety and so on. So I'm going to talk a lot about the ITS class, which I developed in 2003. I was actually a consultant for 10 years working in ITS at that point in time. And so when I created the course, it was based on what I found to be needed for people to know to come to the industry. Obviously, we have also transportation engineering seminar with guest speakers every week, and a large proportion of them are ITS experts. So what the class that I'm teaching in there is every spring, and it is a graduate level, but sometime we offer it as a cross-listed also with undergrad. And basically, we divided the course into cross-cutting topics, and then the second part of the class is to go into a more in depth into specific areas that could be dependent on who is giving the class. So the first topic is kind of give an overall the breadth of ITS and TSMO, and then the second part again go into depth to see have the students have some feeling of these technologies and how they operate and how they are designed and so on. So in the first part, we provide introduction, examples of what the Tom called tactics. So we go briefly about in that and spend about 3 to 4 hours. Then we go through system engineering and ITS architecture, ITS evaluation, how to evaluate it pre-deployment and post-deployment, ITS standard, TSMO, and capability maturity model, data analytics, and then civil ITS design. In fact, this is we use the USDOT BCP program module in there. And then in the second part, we focus on active transportation and demand management. But this could be any, somebody is a professor in the area of freight, they could go into freight and or transit or any other topics. So when I look at the Tom and I put my slides and my modules, I thought that first of all, my TSMO module, this course was created before TSMO became TSMO. In 2003, TSMO, it was ITS. There was no TSMO. TSMO, I think, came 2011 or 2012. The name and the concept also has become more defined. So the TSMO module is not very much does not have a lot of material as ITS itself and the technology. So I thought that although I'm teaching the capability maturity model of TSMO and talking about TSMO overall and how it's different from ITS, I thought that a lot of things that in the manual, different chapters like challenges addressed by TSMO, TSMO tactics and outcomes, collaborating entities, the foundational concept of TSMO, how agency goals are linked to TSMO, and definition of TSMO program and program plan. This will be new slides that I will incorporate into that module. And I'm thinking that this will expand the time that I spend in that session from 1.4 hours to 3 to 4 hours. Also, the remaining modules, all of them will benefit from Tom. So one of the interesting concepts there and interesting discussion is the performance management and the performance-based practical design. These planning to introduce them into the performance measurement section of or session of the. So this will expand that significantly, possibly will double the time in that session from 4 hours, maybe it becomes 7 hours or something like that. System engineering, I cover it really well. but I like the system engineering level of detail. That part that is addressed in TOM is something that I have not seen, so that I will introduce. Asset management, I will include that in the enabling technology module. Again, very interesting chapter. Then we have the tactics model and the industry trends between chapter 19 to 20. This will be used in my class in one of two ways. Some of them we will use it in the starting sessions where we talk about ITS functional area. I could change the name of that session to TSMO tactics or something like that, and right now I'm addressing those, but this material will enrich that session. And then the second part of the class, which I am having active traffic management, some of the tactics in TOM will have information, or the chapters on the tactics in TOM will have information that we could add to that part of the class. So some thoughts to close my presentation with is TOM has a lot of information, about 700 pages, and obviously there are other sources around in ITS and then journals and algorithms and AI and data analytics and all of these kind of things are out there. So it can be difficult for faculty, particularly those new to teaching the subject, to go through these 700 pages and have a linkage to decide on how these parts can be delivered and what parts are important to teach in academia versus what parts are more important to people in the industry and staff of the agency and managers, TSMO managers, and so on. So I think that is important. And then that is, I think, the second bullet is delivering information to students is different from delivering information to managers or agency staff, because also we want the students to be interested in the subject. A lot of time, if they are not exposed in day-to-day to TSMO, if we give them all this information at one time without them having feeling the physical aspect of it, it may not be interesting. I always want to introduce some mathematical question, because engineering student like to have math into it. So I make a point of bringing math or some things from manuals or journals or something like that. They solve a problem to incorporate there, and also case studies would be good for the students to get a little bit more interested in the subject. And then so that's possibly, I talk about the third bullet, but also we realize that different instructors possibly have different style of teaching, different interest, and they have also different background. So although modules can be developed, these modules can be updated or possibly developed by the instructor themselves to deliver the messages that or the material that they want to deliver in the way that they want to deliver it. So I think this is my last slide here. I go back to Adam and Tara.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hadi. Really appreciate those thoughts there and the need for some work to align what's in the operations manual with potential either courses or even larger curriculum. Those are great ideas. Next up, Tara Reel, talking about the ITS Joint Program Office. Go ahead, Tara.
Can you see my presentation, Adam?
Sure can. Looks perfect.
All right. Thank you so much. So as Adam was saying earlier, I am really going to be focusing on the PCB program and what we have to offer. So I feel like I'm here to learn from everybody and definitely take this information back to our program manager, JD Schneeberger, and see how we can incorporate it into our current program. But I'm going to start out with a brief history of kind of how we got here, and then hopefully move into some of our programming. And we'll be happy to answer questions after the presentation. To begin, the Intelligent Transportation Systems Program in the United States began with the reauthorization of the Federal Highway Program in 1991. I'm going to speak about, like I said, the PCB program in more detail, but I want to draw your attention to the resources listed on the slide, which can be found online by visiting our website, and I will get into more detail on some of those. The Intelligent Transportation Systems Joint Program Office, that you know as ITS-JPO, was established to coordinate intermodal policy in the implementation of the ITS program. And as part of that effort, the ITS Professional Capacity Building Program was created to address workforce development and provide training programs. The PCB program sets out to provide the transportation workforce with knowledge, skills, and technical resources. As mentioned, this all began in 1991, so it spans several generations, and I kind of want to take a step back and acknowledge how that is very unique and creates some needs. We probably have a lot of seasoned professionals on this call today who may need training because, as we've all acknowledged, technology quickly advances. And we have people who are retiring and we may experience knowledge transfer issues with their departure. But we are talking a lot about students today and early career professionals who are entering the workforce and have been born since 1991 and need to develop their own skills and have that advanced training. And I'm grateful to my colleagues who are here today who are actually doing that in the classrooms. The ITS workforce has become more diverse and will go beyond the engineering profession. And I will discuss that in later slides. As I was talking about technology earlier and how it's advancing, here's a great slide to discuss that. This is some changes that have happened since 1991, and I won't go through all of them, but if you look at the right of the slide, you see changes that have just happened in the past 10 years alone. Cell networks have increased speeds by 200 times, going from 4G networks to a 5G network. And there are other technologies listed here that are now being incorporated or helping shape our traditional transportation policy and practices. As mentioned in the previous slides, delivering the next generation of ITS requires a diverse, multidisciplinary workforce. As you can see, there are several different career options now, and training and education are needed across the profession. And I think Dr. Ivey hinted at this earlier. The earlier you catch folks, they can start learning crucial skills. So we are trying to think about this holistically across the spectrum of education, going all the way back to kindergarten. Another one of our colleagues, ITS America, surveyed agencies recently to understand the current state of academic employer workforce coordination. And we just wanted to highlight a few things that they found out. They looked at ITS recruiting and found 90% of agencies really do focus on civil transportation engineers. But as technologies and professional knowledge needs to evolve, it is suggested that the agencies begin recruiting outside of those majors. They looked at how agencies actually train their employees regarding ITS. 20% use mentoring programs, 25% conduct their own internal training, 20% use our resources, and 15% are using other external resources. Of those surveyed, nearly half of the agencies have heard of our PCB resources, but some entities haven't heard of us at all. So please help us get the word out to your agencies that we do have a lot of resources available. And now I'm going to talk about some of those. On our website, you will find different trainings, but we also offer some of those in person. I'll get to those in a little bit. But on our website, you'll find trainings regarding foundational ITS. So that covers everything from TSMO, V2X, systems engineering. You've heard a lot about that today, but architecture, standards, cybersecurity. So we're starting to produce a lot of diversity in what our trainings are. And if you're short on time, something new that we are introducing are micro learning videos. Now, these are only about 5 to 10 minutes long and can be accessed on our Smart Communities Resource Center site, which just launched not too long ago. And I'll be getting a little bit more into that on the next slide. But these are some resources that are now available that you can check out. So the Smart Community Resource Center was actually a mandate by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And this is a website that PCB is now overseeing and putting materials out on behalf of the JPO. It is an online resource supporting information sharing and technical assistance related to ITS and smart community deployments. And we are currently in phase 2 of the site. And its resources, like I keep talking about, everything is evolving. This website is evolving too. And we plan to provide more tools to communities. So if you go out to the website right now, you might experience some of our dust as we're renovating, but please stay tuned. There's a lot of resources that we plan to launch in the coming year. One that we were very excited about was a focus on interoperable connectivity. And this page alone boasts more than 100 V2X resources and open source data tools, including the V2X Hub, map and TIM creation tools, and an operational data environment. So this is a page that's actually live right now that I would encourage you to take a look at. And as I mentioned earlier about in-person trainings, we just launched a V2X training this year, which is going really well. I'm getting ready to show you a map so you see every place that we've been. But this particular training in person introduces key components that enable a V2X ecosystem, potential benefits of the technology, and provides an overview of use cases. And this is a training that was developed, but we do plan to integrate it in other ways, perhaps in webinars, doing train the trainers, and also into our academic program. And this is the map that I promised you. We have several sites that we have actually visited to give the training. We have some that are planned, and it's not on here, but the reason that JD Schneeberger is not here today is he's actually in New Mexico delivering one of these trainings this week. And as I said earlier, we have worked closely with academia. We appreciate our partners there. And the whole point is to develop ITS educational resources. And a couple that I like to highlight are ITS course modules that cover the fundamentals. We also have an annual student competition, and shout out to Adam and his team at NOCoE, who we work very closely with to put on this event every year. And also Dr. Ivey. I know that we've had several of your teams in past years, and it really gives students a chance to work with industry professionals to learn about ITS and TSMO, and they actually develop their own ConOps for real world problems. And we're always excited to get them because they're so detailed and professional, and it's very impressive. But we do appreciate our partners who help us put this on every year. And our next program is currently being planned. In order to teach other concepts, the program has developed or is developing tools for classrooms, and we always welcome feedback from our academic community on that. One of the tools that was developed is Cave in a Box. This is a hands-on learning tool representing a connective transportation ecosystem, and we've also worked on do-it-yourself resource tools so that you're able to create this within the classroom. One of our newer products that we're trying to get out is called CDA 1/10. And this is an open source 1/10 scale vehicle equipped with CAV software to teach student concepts. So we're not only just giving you the trainings, the webinars, the in-person trainings, but also how can we provide hands-on experience when students are in the classroom, and how can we help our academic partners really utilize and integrate that into their classes. And with that, this is contact information for me and JD if you should have any follow-up questions regarding the PCB program. And thank you all for listening, and happy to be here today.
Thank you so much, Tara. It's great to be reminded of, how much is still needed in terms of delivering these resources to people, and also an understanding of where the practice has gone. Excuse me. I wanted to ask all the presenters a few questions. In some of this we heard, and some of these are things that I think we probably all want to keep thinking about as we move on in this direction of thinking about how best to deliver resources to students and young professionals. But the first is where are those major gaps of TSMO knowledge of students and young professionals? Dr. Ivey, I know that you're working to alleviate those, and Tara, you showed a nice knowledge base there, and Professor Hadi, you highlighted certainly some of the areas where there are gaps. But I guess this question is a little bit less about the classroom and maybe in that job seeking area. Where do you see those gaps when students go try to enter the workforce with these materials? Where are those gaps still at?
I can start. I think from what I have seen, the biggest gap that's there is just awareness. Because unless they end up in a class where we're intentionally trying to make sure that they learn about this and that they're being exposed to TSMO and ITS, they don't see it. And so I think that that's one of the biggest issues that we face, is that, it's trying to make sure that they're exposed to it early enough and often enough that they even are aware of these opportunities.
I think I put my camera. I'm trying to put my camera on, but I think the main one of the area also, in addition to what Stephanie said, is actually the kind of design. I think on a class of TSMO and ITS, we can teach them a lot of the planning level, evaluation, performance measures, and stuff like that. But going to actual design of a signal, going to play with a signal controller or roadside unit or fiber optics design or things like that. And I think what Tara was talking about, the tools that are produced. In fact, we're starting to work with the cave in the box and these kind of things, because I think those, when people start a little bit more hands-on, not just abstract kind of thing, but a little bit, oh, this is the controller, I can push a button, and when I push the button, this change in it or something like that. That I think would be very, very much needed.
You stole my answer. That's part of what I was going to say is I think not just teaching them conceptually, but giving them opportunities to have that hands-on experience. And I think with the PCB program, some of our strengths have been, what is it that we can do to provide those tools to you, but also how can we create manuals and give you the opportunity so that you can create it in your classroom yourself, so you can replicate it. Because I know Cave in a Box we were sending around to folks, but also having the transportation technology tournament, that is a great way to actually, give them experience working with a real world problem. And I know JD is newer to this program, and he has been blown away. He was talking about how they were doing digital twins. They were really thinking artificial intelligence. They're thinking beyond what we're thinking they're learning. So it's like, when you think about the gaps, it's so vast, and it goes back to technology is changing so quickly that we have to be able to keep up with that. And I think the hands-on experience is where we put a focus.
It's great. I mean, it reminds us that as we, focus on bringing the knowledge into the classroom and developing those knowledge resources like the TOM, that the, skills and abilities of the students to deploy these things is equally as important to consider. I wanted to, and again, if anybody has any questions of the speakers, feel free to use the Q&A or the chat box to drop those in. I wanted to ask a little bit about sort of those main resources that you've used through the years. Dr. Hadi and Dr. Ivey, you especially talked about some of the things you're using now. What was there anything that predated it? What have you used, from your original ITS class, Dr. Hadi or Dr. Ivey? What were you using before NOCoE was around for case studies? Where did those types of things come from, besides the PCB program, of course? Can you share a little bit about that?
Stephanie, you want me to go first? Okay, so again, I would start 2003. NOCoE was not there, but the PCB program was there. But most of the PCB modules, a lot of them came later. The one that we used. I used a lot of the system engineering and the ITS architecture, obviously, and ITS standards website, say USDOT. And then there are, I use also the manuals, like the detector manual, and there is a RAM metering manual and active traffic management document and things like that. So I incorporate, and then I look at journal, because the students love mathematical problems, as I said. So I try somehow, my other classes, I teach a lot of math in it. In ITS, if it is all talking about concepts, they may get bored. So I try to introduce some equations or problems from journals work, or from the manual, or this is how the fuzzy logic ramp metering algorithm work and things like that. These are taken from the manuals and so on. But then with the USDOT PCP program, also I don't take a whole modules. A lot of time I take slides from the modules and incorporate them into my slides. For example, the ITS civil engineering, civil design, and some other modules. I just take some of it and put it in my slides.
Similarly, I used a lot of just, web, agency websites or journal publications, specific articles that I thought were relevant for students to get an idea of how it's actually applied in the transportation space. I used to use a kind of a generic systems engineering textbook, and it had a couple of sort of relevant transportation examples and case studies in it, but a lot of it was just, all different kinds of applications. So it wasn't necessarily, it certainly was not specifically transportation focused. So I think even just over the last 3-ish years, I think it's exploded in terms of the resources that we have available now that are just very helpful for introducing students to these concepts.
Thank you both. A question came up in the chat box about is there a decreasing interest in transportation civil with all these trends that are coming out? And if so, is there a reason behind, from a professional perspective? Let me just add that we at NOCoE and via the tournament and some of our programs, we talk about the need for people beyond civil engineers to handle some of these problems, and for we have a work job descriptions for a numerous amount of positions that contribute into TSMO departments beyond civil engineers. So I'd ask Dr. Ivey, Dr. Hadi, Tara, do you see this trend at all? Is it good? Is it bad? Where do you think it's going?
I can start if you want. So I definitely see it. And I think from the standpoint of just demand for civils, that's not good. But I think that one of the biggest reasons is that students, if they're thinking about, let's say, an engineering pathway, they are exposed in high school or middle school or even elementary school to STEM programs where primarily what they're seeing is robotics. And so if those connections are not made to how the advanced technologies are really shaping the discipline, so civil and specifically transportation, I think transportation is the obvious place for us to really showcase this within civil. If that doesn't happen, they don't see the kind of that excitement and the opportunity that they think are available in other areas. And I think the other thing that is missing a lot is the connection to community impact and how that can really be brought out through transportation careers.
Yeah. I want to build on what Dr. Ivey just said. On the second level, not high school, but undergrad, we have the biggest problem that we face. Civil engineering, I think there is still big interest. We have a very large program, and we don't have a drop in the people that are coming to civil engineering. Our main problem is getting some of those, getting them to finish master, graduate school. And a lot of them, when they want to finish graduate school, they don't come to transportation, they go to structure or environmental. The reason is that a lot of the time, the undergrad, because of the one course, they don't get exposed. And I don't teach it. The senior professor don't teach undergrad. I focus on PhD students and graduate. So they don't know that there is TSMO and there is ITS, and they don't get attracted to it, so they don't come and finish their master. In fact, we were talking internally about that last week. The only people, a lot of time, the people that come to our master program are graduate from our program. When they graduate, they find that the best opportunity in civil engineering actually isn't transportation. So their companies pay for them to come and finish their master. And we are talking about, we as a senior faculty, we need to do a better job to go to the undergrad and bring them, describe to them ITS, automated vehicle, and things like that, attractive concept that will bring them back from environmental and structure and soil mechanics to transportation.
If I can build upon what
Please.
you both were talking about, as I sit here, I know JD isn't here today, but I hear his words. He's always talking about telling the story. And I think that's what both of you were hinting at, is how do you make that connection to tell the story? And there are so many paths to a transportation career. I'm certainly one of those stories. I joke that I'm a play engineer and wish that I had somebody when I was younger talk to me about STEM. And because I probably would have really went for a civil engineering degree. But I think there's a lot that's happening right now. For me, transportation is very exciting. And I mentioned Bill earlier, the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's a piece of that that is so focused on innovation. And you're going to start seeing that if you go to the SCRC website, once we launch our new news page, we're following articles of the SMART grant program. And a lot of that is focused on how do you take an innovative idea and provide a solution. So I think, or at least I'm hoping, and I'm hearing this from Dr. Hadi and also Dr. Ivey, that some of our programs that we're trying to push out there and bring more students in, we would love to have more student groups at our TTT, because it gives people, students, an opportunity and people to see that this is a pathway to them. And I think, as more of these stories get out and you're able to make a connection and say, Cincinnati did this project, or there was a project in California, and this is how they used ITS, the more connections that we can make, not to be punny with transportation, but the more connections we can make in telling the actual story, I think is how we build that kind of momentum and excitement, because it is an exciting time to be in this field, and there are different pathways to get here.
Very well said, Tara. I think we should end on that note about telling the story. I appreciate all three of you for giving your different perspectives on how we bring more knowledge, skills, and abilities to those students. This has been extremely valuable. We'll have a recording posted in the next couple days up on the NOCoE website. So feel free to look for that, or on the NOCoE YouTube channel. And if you have any questions about the TOM in particular, especially if you're from a state DOT and you haven't gotten access to it, please do reach out. We can help with that. And in the meantime, stay safe, be well, everybody, and we'll see you on the next webinar.